Hello, you're listening to Storytelling Saga, the podcast that shares stories. I'm your host, Allie, and this week I'm so excited to welcome musician and composer Pat Irwin to the podcast. Welcome, Pat.
Nice to meet you.
Likewise. So, I wanted to hear from you, Pat, to start out. I want to hear about musicians you admired growing up that helped shape your musical style.
Oh, wow. Well, that's cool. Oh, my goodness. I mean, I think that my very first example that I could name would be the Beatles on Ed
Right.
Sullivan. I'm that age, so everybody around my age was tuned into the television on Sunday to see the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan show, and that looked like a pretty good job to me. Um, but I also loved the music from like the James Bond movies. So those were like those are first real memories of things. But I grew up taking clarinet lessons, and so I had a thing for Benny Goodman. My dad, I think, liked Benny Goodman. Um, so that was in the house. My dad's favorite record was Benny Goodman live at Carnegie Hall. And then as I got I went through the usual. I love Chicago blues. I love instrumental rock and roll, which really influenced Rocko. So it would have been like Booker T and the MGs and Link Ray, surf music like Pipeline by the Shantays and Walk Don't Run by the Ventures. I mean, I love that stuff. And but just bring it on. I mean, I listen to classical music, Satie and Stravinsky. I listen to the Beach Boys. I remember where I was when I heard Good Vibrations for the first time. Um, you know, I really just have pretty broad tastes
Nice.
and would go through some changes from time to time. I went through a Captain Beefheart phase, which I still slip into every once in a while. I loved, I mean, when Rocko was starting, I had been through the, those great New York bands like Ramones and Talking Heads and Blondie and Television, and Suicide. I mean, those bands really influenced me. Of course, that's not growing up. So, I went on a little there, but you get the idea. But just you send it my way, I'm in.
Absolutely. I know a lot of iconic bands and everything there. So you just mentioned, so you took clarinet lessons. So was clarinet your first instrument or piano?
Yes.
Or because I know you played keyboard and guitar. Oh, it was. Oh, cool.
Yeah, I didn't take piano lessons until I was done with Rocco. I never had piano lessons. I never had guitar lessons until I was like in my 30s.
Oh, wow. That's cool. I've dabbled a tiny bit in guitar because I took piano lessons when I was younger and all throughout high school, actually. Piano is personally my favorite instrument. Do you have a favorite instrument or no?
It depends on the day. I love funky old weird instruments. Like um when I was touring the B-52s, I would buy instruments that I found in thrift stores, like auto harp or weird old drum machine, synthesizers. I mean, I love playing guitar.
Mm.
I spent a lot of time standing in front of the mirror trying to look like a cool guy, so I've done my time with the electric guitar.
Oh, nice. That's really cool too. And I'm sure this varies for you greatly as well, but do you have a favorite musical genre? Or I'm sure it's everything too.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I would say rock and roll.
Oh, yeah, nice.
I mean,
Like,
let's just face it. I mean, I can't really change that. I love jazz. I love
hmm.
Duke Ellington. I love, that's what was so cool about Rocco, to play with somebody who played with Duke Ellington. Um, but at the end of the day, I grew up loving rock and roll.
I'd love to hear too about your bands that you founded, Eight Eyed Spy and the Rabies. Love to hear about that.
Um, Yeah. I mean, well, I was living in Paris and all I knew was I wanted to get back to New York and be in a rock and roll band and play either CBGB's or Max's Kansas City. And so I did. Eight-Eyed Spy came about first of those two because I had met George Scott at my place. I had a loft on 27th Street, like an old abandoned factory warehouse. And George passed through and he asked me if I wanted to form a band. It wasn't quite like that, but that's generally the idea. And George Scott had been playing in the Contortions with Don and Jody Harris, who I later met with the Ray Beats. But when I first met George, he wanted to form a rock and roll band and he said he knew a great singer, and that was Lydia Lunch. And Lydia had been in Teenage Jesus. So, Eight-Eyed Spy and the Ray Beats really, I mean, were almost at the same time. And they were formed out of this sort of group that had recorded on the No New York record, produced by Brian Eno. And so, the Ray Beats were Don, Jody, and George from the Contortions and myself. And then Eight-Eyed Spy was George from the Contortions, Jim and Lydia from Teenage Jesus. And then the Michael and I were, new to the scene.
Oh, very cool. So then, what was like your first performance, like your first live performance with each of these bands?
I think the first performance with Eight-Eyed Spy was Max's Kansas City, and it went really fast. We recorded a demo at Don's place, Donnie, and walked it up the street. And I think within days we played, Max's Kansas City in December. We then played the Mud Club. We played Tier 3, which was just up the block. We played a really cool party called the Times Square Show, which was like a gallery of downtown, you'd call it a pop-up gallery now, but Keith Haring and Jean-Michel and Collab, the artists from Collab, just crazy. And we played that party because Jody knew one of the artists, Kiki Smith. He knew her really well. And so that type of thing, I don't think we went above 14th Street very often.
Oh, interesting. That's too funny. So like for you with each of these bands too, was there like a memorable, like a performance that just really stuck out as like, this is like an amazing, incredible experience? I'm sure there are like plenty, but one that stands out for you.
Off the top of my head, I remember one right now with the Ray Beats driving through a horrible storm up through New York to play in Toronto with a show that was booked by these two guys, Gary Cormier and Gary Top, that I'm still in touch with Gary Top. And they booked everybody in Toronto. The Ramones and the Police, and we were opening for the Stranglers. And I remember we were late. For some reason, that just pops out into my mind because we were late and the Stranglers had this incredible road crew that we pulled up. They just pulled our stuff out of the truck and set it up and we hit it. And then we were done. That was just that sticking out in my mind. That was cool. Eight-Eyed Spy, I remember we played a wedding once. Oh man, Eight-Eyed Spy. We played a prison.
Wow.
Yeah, we played down like in Lower Manhattan. We played a prison gig.
Wow.
That was weird, man. Lydia. Wow. Yeah, I remember that. I mean, Eight-Eyed Spy played a lot of really cool gigs. For a band that barely recorded or didn't do anything, we went around the block. I remember playing in Italy, but one of my favorite clubs, I think, was Tier 3, where it was like on the corner of West Broadway. No, it was on West Broadway at White Street. Mug Club was on White Street, and we only rehearsed. I lived on the block on Franklin, so I could just go there. And the crowd, there was no stage, and the crowd would just be pushed up against you. And I remember playing, and it was just packed. And I remember playing there. I have a lot of fond memories of both those bands.
That's really cool. I know it just sounds like such an amazing adrenaline rush. Like, yeah, I can only imagine. That's really fascinating. That's incredible, playing a prison. I never realized that's a thing. That's cool though. Wow.
Yeah, man. We we did it all.
That's fascinating. Oh my goodness. So, of course, when I reached out to you, as you know, I'm a big fan of Rocko's, and of course, so like I know you're a composer of television and movies. So, I'd love to hear, generally speaking, about the process of scoring an episode of television and what that looks like.
Well, first of all, cartoons in general are pretty different than regular television. I mean, the common denominator might be that the deadlines are are both pretty serious, and they're highly collaborative. With Rocko, the first thing I got were storyboards and drawings. And I talked to Joe, and he talked about the colors. He said there were no right angles. He described the colors as fruity. He described the sound. He wanted to be like sensory overload. I talked about a couple cartoons that I liked. And then we just dove in. Let's go. He, he just sent me some notes. I got the storyboard. I came up with some ideas. They sent me an animatic, which is like a crude pencil drawing that you use, like a flip book almost. You see this, start to see how characters move, and you feel the animation. I mean, I love that. With TV, I try to get a script, which isn't the same as a storyboard, but you might say that it's in the same family. And I try to get to know the characters. On TV, episodic television in particular, now they make 2 or 3 episodes at the same time, and they're kind of piggybacking. So you'll get a script, you'll talk to the director and maybe a writer. On Dexter, I talked to Michael C. Hall, the actor. I talked to the showrunner, a bunch of people. And I start just sending them ideas, and they send me notes back. They'll either like it or they don't. And I get to know the characters. I want to know the story, and I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of both. I want to be a part of the storytelling. That's super important.
Yeah, absolutely. I know music basically becomes an identity associated with any given show. Like it's part of its DNA and everything. So yeah, that's really fascinating. I love hearing about all of that. I love to hear too how that compares or differs when you score for a movie then.
Well, movie is on a slightly longer curve. It's longer, takes longer to cut. A movie it takes kind of unfolds over a longer period of time rather than a half-hour television show that's in production. But at the end of the day, it's all kind of the same. You write stuff, you make it up, you try to give a demo recording, a sound that you like, that gets really close to what you want to hear, and you submit it to somebody, mostly the director, and they either like it or they don't. That belongs in my cartoon. Oh, that sounds like Rocko. That could be in Pepper Ann. That belongs in But I'm a Cheerleader. You get a kind of feel for it, and you have to be willing to make changes and fit either to the cut or the character or the direction. But I love this stuff. I love it.
I know. I imagine it's kind of like just even experimenting with sound and technology too, like as things have progressed over the years. I'm sure like it's much different, like say in the 90s when you were composing Rocco to then things now present day with more technology and stuff too.
Yeah,
Mm.
man, that's the big deal. The way technology has changed. I mean, with Rocco, I in the very beginning, I wrote with a pencil and paper,
Oh, there you go.
you know, and Joe would send his notes by fax.
Oh wow. That's so
And I
cool.
would and I would sit, my wife would drive down to the recording studio and wait in the car, and I would run down with my cassette, it's called DAT tape, modern digital audio DAT tape. And she'd be in the car and we'd race down to FedEx. And I would, and what was cool about that is the guy at the FedEx dock was a Rocco fan. He knew it. And he also was a B-52s fan. So he was kind of in on the deal. He thought it was cool. I couldn't be too late. But if I was a little bit late, I could call. And I don't mean like cell phone call. I mean like brr, ding, or beep, 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 whatever. And get it on the truck to go out to the airport to Kennedy to FedEx it to LA. I mean, FedEx at that time was kind of modern almost overnight. Imagine that. And then it didn't take too long where I was sending files over the internet. But what really has changed is the technology has changed so that when I make demos and sketches, it has to almost sound perfect. Like I couldn't have done what I do with what I did on Rocco. I couldn't really do it now, which I could cram in a beat, I could make it sound, I could get the timings right, but it didn't really come alive until we were in the recording studio. With technology and the computer being the way it is, I could make a pretty accurate sounding demo, in, as they say, in the box,
Right.
in the computer.
That's so interesting. And with Rocco too, I'd love to hear actually how you became involved in the first place, like getting the job to work on the show.
Well, that Ray Beats gig that I mentioned with the Times Square show, which Nickelodeon was, the headquarters was just down the block on 42nd Street in Times Square, literally in Times Square. And there was an executive who was a Ray Beats fan, and he came down and brought somebody, and they asked me, well, do you want to do it? And I said, yeah, hell yeah. And then that was that, pretty much.
Oh, it's really cool. And so then I know, so like you had formed, or like you were a former member then of the B-52s, which that was like Rocco, like the theme song
Yes.
too. Yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
really cool. So how does that work with like figuring out a theme song for a show?
Oh, it's just like I haven't, I didn't write the original theme on Rocco, but I drew from that and used Kate's, the B-52's kind of sound for it. Again, up against my kind of score sound of that kind of crazed chaos. But I mean, you want to make the theme song like a signature. It's your signature.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cause I know because in that too, that's kind of again, it's getting you into the show. It's like this is what the show is. This is like the voice of the show in a way too. So yeah, that's interesting. And then what was it like then meeting Joe Murray for the first time? Did you guys like click right away and just like understanding his world and what he wanted for Rocco's modern life?
I mean, I don't think Joe is really a click right away kind of guy, but I sure liked I sure liked what he had to say. And I liked
Mm.
the way he went about saying it. And I loved his drawings. I loved the characters. I love the storyboards and his descriptions of the characters. I think I don't really exactly know what the process was for looking for a composer, but I'm sure glad they found me. And eventually we developed a click, you know, a shorthand. Joe would say, there would be a scene and he would just say something like, well, climb the ladder of anxiety. And
I
that
love
would be
that.
it. That would be it.
Oh wow, that's really interesting. So also for you with Rocco's, do you have like a personal favorite, like not episode to say, but like a personal favorite of like one that you're proudest of, I guess? I don't, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, it does. But that was a fun part about putting the soundtrack together. I had forgotten, and it just, some of it surprised me. It was like, whoa, how did we do that? How could we possibly have done that all in a day and mix it all in a day? Whoa, this is crazy. How did we play that? I couldn't play like that now, I don't think. Maybe I could. But so a personal favorite, not really. I mean, the first couple, Trasho Madness and Sucker for a Suckomatic, I remember moments. Like I remember this. I mean, there's one scene with bagpipes. I got a bagpipe player to come in and play disco bagpipes. He loved that. The bagpipe player is like, whoa, I've never done this before. And there was, every once in a while I would get to play a piece of kind of music that I felt like doing at that moment. Like there was a character, kind of an exercise character who sort of sounded like Richard Simmons or something. And it cracks me up. I mean, I love thinking about specific scenes, and some of it is so kind of off that I can't really say. I was laughing the other night about the Wolf family. I can't remember the music, but I remember, it's like, it might be like just a dinner party or something with a Wolf family. And for some reason, there's a beaver at the table. And the grandpa wolf is going, he can't really hear, but they're trying to talk. And he's just going, let's eat the beaver. Eat the beaver.
Oh my God. Hilarious.
And I'll just catch myself. And like the other day, I was playing something. I teach, and I was teaching class in Brooklyn at Brooklyn College. And I played this one thing where it's from an episode called Flu Innuenza. And Rocko, this one guy goes, I'm playing music, and the guy goes, oh yeah, that's when Rocco's in bed and he's got like the ice pack on his head and there's stuff coming out of his ears. And I go, yeah. I mean, that's so cool. He really remembered where the music went.
Exactly. The things that stay ingrained in our memories, like the things that come flooding back. That's fantastic.
Yeah,
It's
it's
wonderful.
really fun.
So then I'd love to hear, of course, returning to that world of the wacky world of Rocco's 20 years later for Static Cling and what that was like.
Oh man, it was a gas. I mean, when I saw that, it was like, this is the show I want to work on. There's so much about that show that I liked, that movie or whatever you want to call it. The vibe of like, first of all, they've been lost in space for what, 20 years? Oh, yeah, good idea. And then they come back to Earth because they find the remote that'll get them back. And they come back and there's like a bank on every corner. There's iPhones, selfies. Filbert gets like a selfie stick to put on his head, and there's internet porn. There's Starbucks on every corner. you know, and then my favorite is when they find Ralph in the desert. I just love that moment. He's no longer Ralph, he's Rachel. And you don't really know what's going on. All you see is like one big old high heel and then another one. And he flips his hair. It's so good. That's the show I want to work on. I'd do another one in another 20 years if we wanted.
Oh, that'd be amazing. Here's hoping for that. Yeah, I agree. It captured the nostalgia, but then it was perfect commentary of 21st century then, since Rocko's, of course, was 20th century, 90s. So yeah, it was wonderful. I
Yeah,
loved
yeah.
it too.
Yeah,
So
all the traffic and the brands, all the brands that were everywhere.
You reminded me when you said with the porn, you reminded me then there's like a moment with Spunky when he's like looking at mop porn because he's like was in love with a mop in that one episode.
Yeah.
That was a fantastic callback then in Static Cling. That's so funny. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. And I loved the whole modernized thing with Rachel. That was fantastic too, because the whole theme of change and Rocko grappling with this new world and just being literally thrown into it. Yeah, it was fantastic. The movie, oh my goodness, the special, whatever it is,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, because that's the thing. I mean, I know like reboots, generally speaking, it's kind of saturated the market, so to speak, in terms of there's so many reboots with everything nowadays. Like now there's the Frasier reboot, there's all this different stuff. And I know because like a whole big thing is with the streaming that they want to have like these properties that people already recognize and then trying to get new audience involved with it. So I guess like with everything, it's kind of like hit or miss with all that stuff,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm at this point now where I've been doing it for a while, and you come to appreciate the really good ones. And, and I've been really fortunate to work on some really good ones. And you think of like a character like Rocko, that we're still talking about this wallaby. It's wonderful. And the wolf family family of wolves that adopted Heifer.
I know I love with Rocko, like I love the character himself because he's like a sweetheart at the end of the day, despite like this wacky world that he's in. And then I always loved Filbert and his neuroses. I just think he's a
Yeah.
fantastic
I'm
character.
hot, I'm sweaty, I'm nauseous.
Yeah. And then of course, Mr. and Mrs. Bighead. Yeah, it's just I don't know. It's one of those shows as well that people have said this too. It's one of those shows you can appreciate so much more as an adult. All the adult jokes that just went over our heads as children compared to when we watch
Yeah.
it, Yeah, it's
Yeah.
so true.
Yeah.
Well, that's honestly because that too with Rocko, that being a product of its times in the early to mid 90s, that nowadays like that edgy humor, that's not really like with kid shows especially. It's kind of like very much that was just, of its time. That's not really, you don't see that nowadays.
Well, I mean that certainly is a signature. I mean, and that's what's so great about it. I catch a little clip, and it's still it feels almost new. Like, wow, that is wow. But some of it is just so hilarious. I'm thinking of Heifer now. I mean, I couldn't really remember it a second ago, but I'm remembering that one where Heifer, they're on the street and a truck full of cattle goes by. Hey guys, where are you going? We're going to the market. He says, we're going to the market. I want to go to market too. So he like jumps up into the truck and he's like totally out of place. And he goes to the slaughterhouse, and one of the cows is like leaning up against the fence. He's got like a long piece of hay or whatever, is chewing on it like a cigarette. And he goes to Heifer, hey, psst, city boy.
Oh my gosh. And then like, yeah, when he gets, I think that's that same episode, like when he gets milked, like, oh God.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly what it goes on.
It is, right? Yeah. And Brand, that's so hilarious. Oh my goodness. It's so funny. Such joy with that show. That's fantastic. I love hearing about all of that. But then, so I was looking at your IMDb. I didn't know that you did some work on like doing some music for SpongeBob too. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah. Was that for the movies or what was that for specifically? Oh,
no. Well, Steve Hillenberg was the director of Rocko on the last season.
Oh, right.
And he was putting together SpongeBob. And I remember he called me about SpongeBob. And regrettably, to this day, he was, first of all, the sweetest guy ever. And he was telling me about SpongeBob and what he was looking for in music. And I just didn't get it. And I just am so mad, frustrated with myself to this day that I didn't understand what he meant. He said, I want it to sound like a bunch of guys in a room who can't really play. And I didn't understand what he meant. And now I do. But but the guy who was the music editor on Rocko's Modern Life was the music editor of SpongeBob. And so he contacted me about doing, when he would need certain things, he would call me. And so I worked on Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy. I don't remember what else. I remember little things here and there, but I can't remember. It wasn't like I was working on the show. And they pull, I work on specific moments from time to time over the years.
Oh, cool. So kind of like freelance in a way. That's really cool though. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because SpongeBob is still going 25 some odd years later now.
Yeah, it's like on its 15th season. Well, SpongeBob is great. I mean, let's face it.
He's up there now, like you think of iconic characters. You think like Bugs Bunny, Mickey Mouse, SpongeBob's up there now, like Homer Simpson, like so it is amazing, really, honestly.
Without a doubt.
Mhm.
You can't really go. I mean, I'm really fortunate. Like I've done some things that a lot of people know about, and SpongeBob is one of them. You can't really go anywhere in the world without seeing a SpongeBob toy or somebody. If I say, "What'd you do?" and I can say, "Well, I work on SpongeBob," and they know it. It's thrilling.
Yeah, I mean Rocco's too to an extent, but I guess it's a little more niche in terms of but still Rocco's too.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah, Rocco's more of a niche, more of a
right,
cult.
because that's like millennial. Well, I don't know. I'm sure there's kids that watch it too, like nowadays. Who knows? But so then also like looking at your IMDb, you did also Pokemon, the first movie. That's really cool too. Like composing for that.
Yeah, I don't remember. I hate to say it.
Fair enough. So that's like what's funny is when I've interviewed people, I've looked at their IMDb and I said, like, oh, you worked on this, and they would say, actually, no, that's inaccurate. I'm like, oh, I don't understand how weird stuff ends up on the internet when it's like wrong, like weird credits, but
That's the thing. I don't know how that got there. So I think what happened, like there's things like Adventure Time. I think what happens is my music, I don't own it.
Oh, okay.
Like when it goes on to Rocko, I'm not saying like Pokemon used Rocko, but they probably used something else they found. And I don't know how they did it, but they did it. And I saw somebody told me that was there. I didn't, but I didn't sit down and write the music for that movie.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Yeah, that's just I don't know. That's odd to me because I see also here it says Kablam. I don't remember. It says segment Jet Cat. I don't know if I recall that.
Yeah, I remember doing that because I was on the road, and I remember being in a motel room doing it. It was like a variety Saturday morning variety thing. It didn't take off, but I liked the way it looked. I mean, it was a cool thing, but it was one of those things that just didn't didn't click.
And then I know you touched on it. I didn't watch this growing up. I know a lot of people liked that show Pepper Ann because I know that was Disney. And that was what's her name? Sue. I forget. I'm blanking on the creator's name
Sue
for that.
Rose.
Sue Rose. Okay, yeah. I never watched it. I know that's like I'm sure people loved that show, like a slice of life show.
Well, it's a different thing. I got that job because of Rocko. They liked Rocko, but it was nothing like Rocko. It's a really good show. I mean, somebody just in the middle of the night got in touch with me on social media somehow and was flipping out because they were Pepper Ann fans, and they were in San Diego or something, and they were watching the Pepper Ann musical. I mean, that's cool for me. I got to tell you, I love that.
I know that's always wonderful, yeah, you're just like a part of someone's like, and all these wonderful memories. Yeah, that's wonderful. And
Yeah.
then of course you also composed for Dexter New Blood. That's like more recent.
Yes, that was a sort of a extension of the original series of it was Dexter. He had at the end of the regular series he kind of disappeared, and here he was in Dexter New Blood with a new identity in upstate New York, a new name, a new life, same serial killer vibe.
Oh, right. Mhm. See, so I imagine that's much different compared to like, say, wackiness of Rocko versus then like a more horror themed, like that kind of stuff. So do you
Yeah.
prefer one over the other? I imagine they're all like have their own fun things to play around with.
Well, I loved working on Dexter.
Hmm.
I mean, it was really challenging, and I was very glad that they gave me an opportunity. I mean, because the showrunner, I had met Clyde Phillips, the showrunner. We had no worked together, but nobody else knew who I was except for the guy who played in the B-52s and did Rocko and SpongeBob. So they didn't really think that I was the right person for this. Um, but luckily they stuck with me because I love the challenge and the opportunity. Again, part of the storytelling. It's just, and that's a really good character, really well conceived.
Are you able to share? Because I know, I mean, the like, thankfully, the writer's strike has ended. As of the recording of this, the SAG after strike is still ongoing. But are there any current projects that you're working on that you're able to talk about?
Yeah, I'm working on a short film, but mostly, and I have to get going on that. But mostly, I have these bands that I'm playing with. And I've played in bands all the whole time, but that seems to be getting most of my focus. I have two bands. One is called Sus, Suss, and the other is called the PI Power Trio. And Sus has I think we're on our fourth or fifth record right now. Um, and we hope to be doing more playing soon in a town near you.
I was looking at your website with that, like you describe it as ambient country. That's really cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
Exactly.
Also, I wanted to ask you, so when it comes to composing music, whether it's for a specific project or coming up with your own stuff, generally speaking, like whenever you hit creative block, what do you do? Do you just like, oh, let me take a break, or do you like just play around just to kind of like get out of your own head, or like what do you do with that?
Um, well, I like to make stuff. I mean, Rocco was so terrifying. I don't remember having creative blocks. Like I couldn't afford to have a creative block. Same with Dexter. I mean, I don't really relate to creative blocks. Maybe things go up and down, like in terms of being busy, but there's a big difference in recording music for making a record for your own band than there is doing a show, if that's what you mean. Now, being in a band is full of compromises too. But I would not say that I've compromised. Like, I don't mean that like, oh my God, I hate this. I have to play bluegrass music for this show. I don't get it. I don't know why. I want to be Beethoven or something. You go into those soundtrack jobs knowing you're part of something bigger than you. You're collaborating. You're part of the fabric of this show. It's writers and cinematographers and editors and sound designers and set design. You're part of this whole mechanism, this organism, maybe is even a better way to put it. In a band, it's different, but you I love the creative energy in a band, and not all bands are the same. So I don't want to say that my experience is the same as but I know that the things that bring you together in a band, it can be really empowering, it can be a great feeling, but it takes work to keep that going, paying attention. The B-52s, my goodness, they're still at it. I don't play with them anymore, but we were 18. I was together with them for 18 years, and some of them had known each other since high school. So there's, how you get annoyed with your friends. Well,
Hmm.
you get annoyed with the guys you're in a band with. Somebody's always late, or somebody chews funny in the morning, or, that kind of thing. Or you want to work faster, or you don't like that song, or you don't, you have to really work at keeping your cool. I mean, I don't want to pretend like I know it all, but I know that it takes work.
Well, it makes sense because it's, it's like a family in a way, but also it's like a working in terms of like you're all working together. You have to like jive with each other's personalities and like figure out what works, what doesn't. So it makes sense. Yeah. And of course, you're gonna have off days. You're gonna have like, like anyone. But yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. I mean, on a television show, you could bring your grumpy mood into the meeting if you wanted, but you probably wouldn't be hired back for too many if you were, you know, if you're a grouchy bear. You know?
Right. Especially if they don't know you, like then it's like, yeah, if like you're
Yeah,
making a first impression, of course,
yeah,
right.
exactly. Ooh, you want to be the person that people want to talk to.
Right, of course. Yeah. So also when you come up with like say when you have an idea for a song, what do you do in terms of like, oh, I gotta like remember this before I forget? Like do you like whistle it into your phone or something? Or like for me, for instance, when I have an idea, I'll like put it in my notes app on my phone. So like if you're not in front of your keyboard or guitar or anything.
Yeah, I mean, I can write it down. With Rocco, I remember kind of thinking of this punk rock version of Benny Goodman and Link Ray combined, filtered through like the Ventures. And, I had these images in my mind. Sometimes on a piece, I might struggle with it a little bit and I'll I'll write it down and then I'll write it into the computer and I'll go back and forth, like a version of your notepad that you're describing. Um, it happens different ways. Let's, I'll hit it and quit it. I'll just say that.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm sure, obviously, like with everything, it's just whenever inspiration strikes. So I'm trying to, I mean, because I see like a bunch of your other projects too, like Nurse Jackie and also Fall to Grace, My New Gun, etc. Do you have, like, do you have like a favorite project?
Well, Rocco is up there. I mean, Rocco, you could just dare to be stupid. I mean, I just, I let it rip and did all sorts of stuff. But there are things about other projects that I'm very fond of. I mean, like there's a moment in My New Gun that I just treasure. There's the experience of Dexter New Blood was, working on a really high level with a lot of pressure. And but I don't I don't have a favorite that stands out like, oh my God, that was just the one. I'm not all that nostalgic, but I feel really lucky. I mean, there are students of mine who are crazy about, but I'm a cheerleader. That movie's 30 years old, I think. And it's taught in both schools that I teach at. It's on the curriculum. And there are things about that movie that I really love. So, but I don't specifically have a favorite.
I mean, the thing is, though, obviously, like with TV, then you're spending more time with the characters like week to week. So then you get to kind of, with Rocco again, for example, I guess kind of in a way, it's like even each of the characters kind of have like their own theme in a way. Like that's like part of like their personalities and stuff, like Heifer compared to Rocco compared to Filbert. So like that's incorporated too, like with the music. So I find that all really interesting. I don't know. I could just keep like gushing and gushing about Rocco, but
Well, I
because
mean,
that's
it's
part of my.
cool. I mean, Rocco had some impact. I mean, when I was a dad at my son's school, and it was like dad go to work day or something like that, I remember going, and this kid knew I worked on Rocco. I know this kid still to this day, and he got all serious, and he, just a little guy, like he must have been, oh, I don't, I just a little guy, and he goes, do you know Rocco?
That's so cute. Yeah,
Yeah,
see, like that's amazing.
yeah.
The
Uh,
impacts that these fictional characters have, but that's the whole thing of like, you put so much of yourself into it too, in a way, obviously. So it's like for you contributing your music to, yeah. So I find that all wonderful. It's just like everyone's passion that it becomes this wonderful thing that people can resonate with and that has this
yeah,
lasting impact, 30 years later. I'd
yeah.
love to hear about the classes that you currently teach.
Yeah, I teach a seminar in composition for film and television at the Fierstein School of Cinema at Brooklyn College. So it's grad school. And, I never went to school for music. So I get to learn on the job. This is really fun for me. And the students are off the hook, talented. And they want to know about Rocko, and I like to tell them about Rocko. And at NYU, I teach at the Graduate School of Music Theater Writing. And that's different. I mean, it overlaps, but I can't like say the same thing at one school that I can say at the other. These are it's a very, very compressed lecture where I talk about composing for music, composing music for film and television with students who are at NYU to learn about writing a musical.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, it is cool. It's super cool. That was my first teaching gig. And it's at the NYU, it's grad school again. So these are grown-ups and they're super talented. And what's fun for me is, first of all, I like music theater. I'm not a music theater freak, but I like it. And I know a little about it, but not a lot. But I know enough that I respect it. And I know what it takes to write a musical, the discipline and how intense it is. But there are a lot of music theater writers who, New York is a pretty small community of this world. And I run into people who graduated from NYU who might be working on a kids show that I'm working on, like as a writer or something. And so anyway, it overlaps. These music theater students want to know about writing music for film and TV.
That's awesome. Just on a side note, do you have a favorite musical that you've seen, like on Broadway or anything?
Oh, golly. Sunday in the Park with George, Sweeney Todd. Those two just floored me. Those are the ones coming to mind right now. Stephen Sondheim ones. Yeah.
Yeah, he's obviously like that's like, ubiquitous name in like the musical world. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
I love hearing about all this stuff because obviously music has a lasting impact on the world in general, but then like in all these different mediums, then in television, in movies, in musicals, of course, and then of course just playing live music. So yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, you know what I like about teaching
Mm.
so much, and it kind of relates to what you just said there, and I wouldn't have said this otherwise, but to me, it's just as important, if not more important, than history or economics. I mean, we need more of these people in the world who, even if it's just one course and you've taken a music course, well, that can prepare you to be a senator or work in a financial firm. I mean, it could, we just, if there was more of this kind of humanity in the world, it would go a long way. I just think music, composition, arts in general, you know, yeah, let's bring it on.
I 100% agree, like the importance of music education. Yeah. And like how that's been a whole thing of funding it, in certain schools, whatever. But it's important in general, like I would say in children growing up, like to at least whatever, try to like something with music. For me, like that was part of like I was in bands growing up. I played the bells or the glockenspiel, like because then I was loved pianos. And like when I eventually started taking piano lessons. And it helps you. It's like a discipline, of course. Like you have to practice. If you want to get better at anything, you have to practice. But also, like it was like a social aspect of like my friends and I in band, and also like it helps you. It's like it's something that nourishes your soul. It's like your creative spirit. Like it's a passion that, So it's sad when people think that that's not important, as you just said, Pat. So I 1,000% agree. Yeah, it's very
Yeah,
important.
I'm so glad to hear you say that. Plus, the B-52s had a glockenspiel in one of our songs.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, check out "Give Me Back My Man." Brad plays the glockenspiel in that. And we would haul around that glockenspiel from gig to gig for that one song. But and you're right about the discipline.
Yeah.
If it's a big deal, it's a serious deal. I mean, and then you don't have to go on and be a virtuoso, but if you've played in a band and you know how hard it is, the work to play that piece, to put on that concert, whatever. It's a wonderful thing, and the humanity is just I just if we could just have a little more in the world and the joy of making music together.
It brings people together, absolutely. Because like there's nothing like going to a live concert, live performance. It's amazing. Or just playing, jamming out. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Totally,
Mhm.
totally.
It's been such an absolute pleasure, Pat. So as we're wrapping up, my last question I wanted to ask is if you have any advice for musicians, life advice, any advice you'd love to share.
Um, well, I've said this before, but I'll say it again. Just be yourself. Like when you were kind of pushing on me a little bit about music that I liked, or what is your thing, and I just, you have to just say, look, let's just face this. I play in rock and roll bands. I may like other stuff, but this is who I am. It's what I came up doing. I want, playing rock and roll. I may love the Mozart clarinet concerto, and I can maybe play the slow movement a little bit, but um, I'm not a classical musician, and I'm not about to start to pretend to be one. But that's the thing about Rocko is in particular, is it really allowed me to be myself. And at its best, that's what you play in a rock and roll band for. Like you just get to be where you know, nobody tells you, you get to be yourself,
Mm.
whether it's, you know, I don't care about the band. I don't know what the band would be, but the Ramones or the Replacements or, you know, I don't know, name it now, even Taylor Swift, for crying out loud. I mean, just to be yourself. Um, it's that's my advice.
Well said. Absolutely. I agree. So please feel free to share your social media and anything else you want to promote.
Oh, I wish I had more. I mean, well, Sus has a new record in the works. Hopefully it'll come out next year. That band I have with my two friends, Sasha Dobson and Daria Grace, the PI Power Trio. I need to put that up on my website and promote that a little bit. I'm not a real big promoter, but you can I think you can find stuff that I've done on the internet. But I don't know. I mean, my website is just me. I'm on Instagram at Pat Irwin 100%. I don't know what it is, something like that.
Oh, good. I'll link it.
I got hacked, so I had to get a new.
Oh, oh no. This is the thing, like social media, it's good, like to an extent, but it's kind of, it's really changed over the years, gotten more toxic, I feel, but yeah.
I know. I
No.
mean, it's such a drag. I used to share, love seeing pictures and things I didn't know, but now I'm getting. So my Instagram account is Pat Irwin, and then the number 100%. Pat Irwin
Okay.
100%. And then I'm on Facebook as Pat Irwin Music. And I've been posting some pictures of Rocko and the storyboards on that, and the character drawings, and talking about Rocko a little bit more and sharing. And I hope to do more of that. So that's where you can find me.
Fantastic. This was so wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. This is great.
Yeah, thank you. Right on. Take care. Have a good evening.
You too. Thanks again.
Bye
Bye
now.
bye. And with that, that's going to conclude this week's episode of Storytelling Saga. Be sure to check out storytellingsaga.com. And as always, feel free to send me any questions, comments, or writing prompts by emailing me at storytellingsaga@gmail.com. Next episode, I will be interviewing background painter and art director Andy Clark. He's worked on many shows such as Dexter's Lab, SpongeBob SquarePants, and many others, so I'm excited to chat with him. Until then, thank you for listening, and remember, write what you love.